This video is brought to you by Grandeur Warranty, your #1 online source for factory-backed extended warranties in the country.
4 years ago, my voice dropped. Actually, it didn't. I'm still waiting for that to happen, but Ford did drop the all-new Ford Bronco, and we're gonna find out in today's video, was it actually worth all the hype? 2021 was a big year for worldwide pandemics, but it was also a really big year for the off-road community because we saw the return of the Bronco after years of simply not having one as an option. Now, in theory, the Bronco was to be an awesome machine because it was supposed to offer the open-top, fun-in-the-sun experience of a Wrangler, but without the on-road compromise, more like a 4Runner in how it drove. And without a doubt, from a sales standpoint, I think this thing has been a little bit of a runaway success because since its introduction, they have sold over 470,000 of this generation of Bronco. That's a lot of Broncos, almost 500,000 in just a few years. So, 4 years later, is the Bronco the game changer that Ford promised it would be? And how does it stack up to the competition that have launched since? Vehicles like the new 4Runner, the Land Cruiser, an updated Wrangler, Ineos Grenadier, I mean, there's a ton of them. Now that we're a couple years in, Ford is going with the tried and true formula of special editions. So we had kind of the core versions of the Bronco, vehicles like the Base and the Big Bend and the Badlands and that kind of thing. And now we've moved on to some special editions like this Stroppe Edition, which is named after off-road racer Bill Stroppe, who was a big deal in the late 60s. There is one thing for certain. Ford nailed the look of the Bronco. Even in 2025, I think this design is still modern and fresh, but also retro cool in the best kind of ways. Now this Stroppe Edition, it's a little bold. If I went to my wife and said, I'd like to leave the house today wearing 4 different colors and one of them is orange, she'd probably say, you couldn't pull that off, idiot, and I definitely couldn't. But I think Ford kind of has in this Stroppe Edition. So let's talk about what we got going on here. So base coat Oxford white with a code orange two-tone on the lower half along with the color painted fender flares. Then you have an Atlas blue top back here with orange Bronco spelled out across the quarter panel. And then in the front, you have a matte black hood, a matte black tailgate, and then a slightly different white on the grill, or at least that's what I've read, a frozen white. But unlike me, the Bronco really can pull it off. I think this is a fantastic look, and this thing gets a monumental amount of attention driving the road, which is pretty crazy for a bone stock vehicle. Now let's talk about what we got going on here. So we do have, of course, full LED headlights here with your running light, and then Bronco spelled out in bright orange across the grille. You've got bright orange recovery points. You are going to notice though that this vehicle doesn't have any kind of fog light, and it also doesn't have any kind of winch. Stroppe was a world famous off-road racer back in the day. It would have been awesome if Ford had integrated some rally lights on the front of this thing to kind of pay homage to that, or maybe a winch on the front of it just to increase some of the visual pop a little bit beyond just the color palette. Now as we come along to the side here, this is a Sasquatch equipped Bronco. So we do have the 35-inch Goodyear Territory RT tires. It's a 315/70 R17. So it's a 17-inch beadlock capable wheel. This is not functional right out of the factory because those are not allowed according to DOT rules, but I really love this. This is brilliant. So along the side here, we have a step, which I usually hate because these always get stuck off-road, you get caught up on rocks, but you also have a rock rail built in. Check that rocker panel, and then if you look back here, you got just a few bolts along the front and back to actually remove the step portion. That's brilliant. So you get the benefit of protection, and then you get the benefit for short folks if you need to get in and out. Now, this hard top is pretty wild. This is the Atlas blue. So a lot of people, when they look at this in video, they think, oh, it's red, white, and blue. It's actually not. It's orange, white, and blue, but definitely unique look. This is something that I think people are either going to really like or really dislike, but I like how it's shiny along with everything else on the vehicle, except for the tailgate, which then brings back those matte black cues back here, full-size spare tire, and then if you look carefully, a couple little Easter eggs here. You get a little Sasquatch there on that rear trim piece, and then if you look over here on the Stroppe, you have a little cactus, a little hint to its desert heritage. But as a whole, 4 years later, every Bronco looks cool. I'm a bit of a sucker for a limited edition. I like to fall for that marketing thing a little bit, and I have to say this Stroppe, pretty ace. Now there is something kind of wild. When the Bronco launched, I'm talking pre-Raptor, there were 2 configurations and 2 engines. There was 2-door and 4-door, and then there was 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder, and you can get either in either configuration. It was kind of like Legos. But now, you can't get the V6 in the 2-door, except in this vehicle. So the cheapest V6 2-door Bronco you can now buy is $78,000, which is kind of wild. Now, a lot of people are upset about this. This is not really that big of a deal for me because the 4-cylinder A is plenty of power for this application, and B, Ford now offers that $895 tune to the 4-cylinder that makes it behave a lot like the 6-cylinder. So this engine, twin turbo, 2.7, I mean, it does have really good power. But in an era where any mom electric car will take practically any sports car off the line, it doesn't really matter if it's got a little bit more power than the 4-cylinder, because the 4-cylinder also has plenty of power. So I don't feel like either of them are lacking. And honestly, if you really don't drive that fast, it doesn't matter if you're going 4 or 6-cylinder. So I think that the V6 and the Stroppe, it's kind of a cool thing now that it's exclusive to the Stroppe. It's a bummer if you really wanted a V6 in the 2-door. But that does mean one thing, is you can't get the Stroppe in a manual transmission, because you've only ever been able to get the 4-cylinder in the manual. But regardless, people are upset about it. I wouldn't be upset about it. If you want V6 power in your 2-door, just buy a 4-cylinder, get that factory-backed warranted tune on your 4-cylinder, and you're good to go. I'm doing my hardest here to make a Bronco look uncool. Put me next to anything and it's gonna be pretty uncool. But let's talk about some of the mechanical changes between the Stroppe and the standard Bronco. We talked about the engine, but there is 1 or 2 other little things. I think they could have pushed the envelope a little bit more in terms of mechanical hardware differences, but we do have a nice set of shocks on this thing. So Haas 3.0, they're Fox 2.5 internal bypass shocks, which is great, right? A little bit more hint to that maybe higher speed off-road capability that the Bronco can offer. But it would be awesome if they gave this thing more horsepower, right? Or a bigger tire, like a 2-door on 37s, or a winch, or some cool rally lights. They should have pushed it just a little bit further, in my opinion. Now, that is especially true when you consider the price of the Stroppe. So you can get a very kind of stripped down 2-door Bronco with a Sasquatch package for $49,000. That Stroppe is 78 grand. So it is the most expensive non-Raptor Bronco out there. And it's a lot of money for a 2-door Bronco that's very compromised from a daily livability standpoint. Now, I do appreciate it's special, and hopefully it's limited, although I don't think it's numbered. However, it's a lot of money. And for 78 grand, you could take a base 2-door and build that with bigger tires and a winch and some other goodies that doesn't have. So it's an expensive value proposition. And if you are looking to purchase a Stroppe Bronco and you want to protect your $78,000 investment, you have to check out Grainger Warranties, the #1 factory-backed warranty out there. Check them out using the link below, and they even now have an offer to give you some protection for off-road damages, which is very cool. So look, I think we've proven in many videos on TFL Off-Road the capability of the Bronco Off-Road. It's very, very impressive, and you can check all of those out. We've got an Everglades that we're going to do a comparison with this thing. I mean, we got a lot coming, and we've done a lot, and they're amazing off-road. But how are they on-road? Because the Wrangler is also amazing off-road. Well, I think that the Bronco is definitely worth the hype in terms of on-road dynamics. Certainly the 2-door is a little bit more firm than the 4-door and a little bit less composed over some expansion joints at highway speeds, but for the most part, independent front suspension, rack and pinion steering, it's just an easy machine to drive on the road, and it never kind of feels out of sorts. And the Wrangler's gotten a lot better over the years, but there are still instances on the highway when you're making turns over expansion joints where things get a little jittery. The Bronco, smooth, easy to drive, and it's pretty quiet, it's plenty fast, it's got good brakes, it's got good handling dynamics, and it's definitely worth the hype on the road, especially when you consider the insane things that this thing can do off the road. Now, if we step on into the Bronco, to Ford's credit, they have improved this interior over the past few years. Even though there hasn't been like an official facelift of this Bronco, they have been adding features that people have been asking for, like rear seat AC vents, which is huge. That's awesome. And there's been a couple of little changes as well throughout the line. For example, this Bronco now has a fully digital instrument cluster, which is kind of a love-hate thing for me. I think that the functionality it gives is very nice, but I kind of like that one single gauge you could get on the older Broncos, which is cool. And then, like, I've harped on interior quality in the past, but the Stroppe Edition, you know, they've done some things, I'm gonna give them credit, that make it feel more premium, as it should for the price point. But for example, like this stitched dash upper here looks really good. And I love this new contrasting dash panel here in the white with the orange Bronco lettering, and then you've got little orange bits and bobs throughout the entire interior. You have it here on the seats, which is cool. You have it here on the GOAT mode. You've got this really cool little Stroppe Edition badge, which is so 60s, 70s in the way that looks. This is one of those cars, I think, that I don't think they're going to sell a lot of them because it's big money for a two-door Bronco. But in 50 years, cool, these things are going to be worth a lot of money. But look, this interior is very usable. It's got a good set of seats in it. This one's got the B&O 12 speaker audio system, which is still a little bit of a letdown for me, but the technology apart from that's really good. Wireless CarPlay, the system is fast, it's easy to use, it's easy to understand. It's just a good, basic, easy to use system. And then I love that we still have climate buttons and controls, volume, tune. We still have physical knobs and dials and switches, so huge credit to Ford for keeping that alive. I'm worried that when they do facelift the Bronco, a lot of that stuff's going to go digital because it saves them money. But for the most part, this interior is worth the hype, and it continues to get a little bit better year over year. Of course, the most important thing really with any vehicle is longevity and reliability, other than looking cool in orange paint, of course. But now that these things have been around for a few years and there's 500,000 of them out there, we can talk a little bit about how these things are holding up. And from what I've seen online, the research I've done, Broncos are doing really well. And I think part of that is because there's a lot of components that are shared with other Ford products, like engines, the basic suspension architecture and platform, right, shared with vehicles like the Ford Ranger. These engines are in other Lincoln and Ford products. So like, I don't want to say that this is a parts-bin vehicle, but Ford, let's say, leveraged some of their engines and options from other vehicles to build this machine. And that means you're also leveraging all that expertise you have from building Rangers and F-150s and other vehicles like that. So for the most part, there's been a couple one-off things that I've seen online, but it really seems like 2.3, 2.7, even the 3 liters are holding up well so far. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the off-road space is hotter than I think it's ever been. I mean, it's unbelievable the number of options out there. And the amount of capability you can buy in a bone stock vehicle. So since the Bronco came out, like we talked about, Toyota launched the 250 series Land Cruiser, Toyota launched the new 4Runner, Ineos started rolling out the Grenadier, and that's before we even start talking about the huge variety of pickup options out there, which just keeps growing and growing and growing. Now, how does the Bronco compare from a driving on the road standpoint? Well, it's kind of boop, right in the middle. I still think it's not quite as good as a new 4Runner. And that's just the physics of it, right? You've got 35s versus 33s. You got a lot more unsprung weight. You got a lot more rolling resistance. You got a lot more chalk to push down the road. But compared to a Wrangler or even a Grenadier, this thing's a lot better. But all of the vehicles have become so good. I'm even talking about the worst of the worst Wrangler you can buy now has gotten so good from an on-road standpoint that this would have been a sports car in 1978, right? So they're all pretty good to drive. I think the Bronco is, boom, right dab in the middle. It's definitely not as refined as like a Land Cruiser. It's kind of right on par with the 4Runner, maybe a little bit worse like we talked about, but it's plenty good compared with competition on the road. Fuel economy depends on how you drive, what you're driving. 18, right? It's pretty normal, 18 to 20, maybe with the V6 down to 17. So it's, if gas is cheap, it's fine. If gas gets a little expensive, driving a Bronco gets a little bit expensive, and I really wish that Ford would expand powertrains to plug-in hybrids. I think that would be awesome, and I bet they're going to when they facelift this thing, which is rumored to be coming next year for 26. No confirmation, but that's the rumor. And then, I mean, fuel economy damned, Coyote-powered Bronco would be sick, right? I don't know if that's ever going to happen, and it's never going to be something that I can afford, but 5-liter V8 Bronco, that would be ace. Now, obviously, at $78,000, it's a little tough to say there's a lot of value in this particular Bronco. And Broncos as a whole are getting steadily more expensive since they were 4 years ago, as is pretty much everything in the world. But it is still possible to get a Bronco in the 30s. Not really low 30s, but certainly upper 30s or low 40s. You might be able to get the base Bronco. And I think that for what you get, especially compared to the prices on Wranglers and 4Runners now, there's a lot of built-in kind of vibes, as Mary would say, in this Bronco. It's just a fun machine that offers a decent amount of practicality and usability for your money, especially on the base end. Once you start looking at some of the upper end Badlands, Raptors, Stropes, right, then the value proposition really goes down. But if you stick around that base model Big Bend area, it still is possible to realistically get a good, livable Bronco for 40 to 45 grand, which is less than the average new car price now, which is $49,000. I've got all mom mode on you. You folks are paying 49 grand on average. It's a lot of money, and that's for across the board. So, you know, picking one up for 45, 50, I can't believe I'm saying this, but by 2025 standards, that seems okay. So everybody, I'd love to hear your input on what you think of the Ford Bronco, how it's been over the past 4 years. I know a lot of you viewers out there own these, have bought these over the years, and please drop me a comment. I'd love to see what you think of them and if they were worth the hype that all the, you know, the craze was back in 2021. And also, what do you think of this new Stroppe Edition? I hate to admit it, because I am a big proponent of base models. But if I had a lot of disposable income, that's a very cool special edition. It's just such a good thing to look at. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you to Jen behind the camera, nickname Jen, everybody. And we'll see you on the next one, alltfl.com, your place for more of me. If you want less of me, well, there's a lot of other YouTube channels, which are probably better, so go check out those. We'll see you next time. And it's like he's dive bombing us, Jan. So peaceful. Why would you want to fly a glider? You have to be towed up by a gas plane. Just fly a freaking gas plane. I never understood that. No offense to my glider girlies out there.